Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 530 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Russ is on assignment. Well, tonight, what to do if you find a wounded wild animal in your Billings backyard? Well, you might think you know how to respond, but the type of animal, city laws, and whose potential responsibility might dictate your decision. An injured deer has been roaming around Billings, and Q2's David J. joins us with some advice and warning from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks. David.
Well, Jeanelle, FWP warns not to try to help the deer or any injured animal. It's best to call, and FWP has received reports of the deer since Friday. This morning, the deer was roaming around in a neighborhood near Colton Boulevard west of 24th Street West. FWP's Bob Gibson says the game warden has determined the arrow has probably not badly injured the deer. He says the arrow may fall out or break, and it's not wedged into the shoulder bone. FWP has already seen the animal and says it is best to leave it alone.
It's a little stressed if it's got something going on health-wise anyway. So give it some room, let it out of the yard. It's still jumping over fences, running through trees, yards. We certainly don't want people trying to catch the deer and pull the arrow out, anything like that. That's a recipe for getting hurt.
And Bob Gibson says it appears that the deer was shot illegally within the city limits. You may call FWP with any information on this deer or any animals that may have been injured or have died. Jeanelle?
All right, thanks so much, David. Well, something we don't see a lot of wandering through our backyards here in Billings. A Polson area resident shot video of 3 young grizzly bear cubs this morning making themselves at home in her backyard. Now, the woman tells us the bears were playing with sticks just feet from her back porch and lingered for quite a while. The homeowner lives about 3 miles outside of Polson along the east shore of Flathead Lake. She says a large black bear also frequents her yard, but this was the first time she was able to get video of grizzly bears. Billings city officials say they now believe they know what caused a sheen in a drainage ditch near Amon Park. Public Works Director Dave Mumford tells Q2 it's believed that diesel fuel either leaked or was dumped onto the ground in a nearby alley and then washed into the ditch by heavy rains. CHS Refinery shut down a pipeline in the area for testing yesterday, but determined that line was not the source of the problem. Mumford says about 5 to 6 cubic yards of soil was removed from the area and will be replaced with new soil. Well, now onto the weather scene. Bob, we have seen our highs and lows this week, but I'm not sure we wanted to go snow low.
Yeah, there's going to be some snow possibly moving into the region. Now, how high or low will it be? Well, let me start off with showing you how much rain we had last night. Here's what we wound up with here in the Billings area, 1,900 of an inch of rainfall. That takes us to basically 128 for the month, so we're about a little over half an inch ahead of normal. And then, as you see for the year, we're at 1,520. That's quite a bit of rain, but that means we're about almost 5 inches ahead of normal. So what's going to happen? Well, as you see here, our high-resolution forecast model shows a new batch of rain moving into western Montana. Looks like it's going to take most of the night there, and then eventually start pushing its way into our neck of the woods by Thursday. And I think maybe by the time Thursday night gets here, about 11:30, the rain will start moving into the Billings area. But we were talking about snow, right? Well, take a look at that. That's the Beartooth Mountains, all that blue and white stuff. That is the snow showers moving in, and it's going to be right around the 8,000-foot level. I would not be surprised to see Beartooth Pass closed after that this weekend. We'll have more on that coming your way in a few more minutes.
All right. Thanks so much, Bob. Well, the state will pay $75,000 to a Missoula lawmaker after he successfully challenged a secrecy provision in Montana's ethics law. Now, the settlement stems from a lawsuit filed by Republican House Majority Leader Brad Teixeira, who filed an ethics complaint against Governor Steve Bullock. Teixeira's complaint said the governor improperly used a state airplane when he and the state commerce director attended a Paul McCartney concert in Missoula. Now, that complaint was later dismissed as frivolous, but Teixeira also challenged the state law forbidding him from discussing the complaint publicly before it was decided. Now, federal court struck down the Montana law, saying it is an unconstitutional restriction of free speech. The $75,000 settlement will cover Teixeira's attorney fees. Well, Montana Governor Steve Bullock is counting on Iowa to give him a chance at the Democratic nomination for president, but a new poll of likely Iowa voters doesn't give Bullock a lot of hope. The poll shows Bullock at just 1%. Former Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Elizabeth Warren are still the favorites at 25 and 23%. The poll was released today by Focus on Rural America, a prominent Democratic group in Iowa. Those same voters have a more positive opinion about Bullock That percentage has climbed 30 points since March. At 1%, Bullock is in a tie for 10th in Iowa. A Montana father devastated by the loss of his youngest son to suicide has turned that tragedy into an opportunity to protect the Missoula police force. That opportunity comes in the form of a new armored transport vehicle from Grizzly Security. Its owner, former Grizz and NFL standout Greg Harris, lost his son Andrew earlier this year after the 22-year-old Grizz player completed suicide. Greg says his vehicle is a donation in honor of Andrew to protect his other son, Josh, who was recently promoted to Missoula police detective and also serves on the SWAT team there.
We named it Andrew, the name of my son who passed away in January, ex-Grizz. He was going to be his senior year this year. Truck is named Andrew, and he'll be watching out over him too.
Now, the average price tag on one of these armored vehicles, $150,000. In Helena this morning, an effort to help with the upkeep of a very important place to Montana's military. MTN's Andy Curtis takes us there.
The Fort Harrison Veterans Cemetery in Helena is the final resting place for many of Montana's bravest men and women. But there was no rest Wednesday for the arborists and volunteers with the nationwide program Saluting Branches, who came from across Montana to help prune trees and do some other groundskeeping work that helps keep this place safe and beautiful for vets and their families.
It's just seeing these cemeteries, all these people buried here, and being able to do something to help beautify this place, because we see a lot of visitors here while we're working, and they're so appreciative of what we're doing. So I think it's a great event, and that's why it's caught on so much across the country.
And volunteer events like this one are a big help to the grounds crew here at the VA. They have a lot of ground to cover and typically not a lot of bodies to do it.
This is great because we're limited manpower, limited budget, and so for these guys to come out and donate material and time and equipment is invaluable to us.
Not to mention their experience in what can be a dangerous line of work.
Between the cemetery and the main campus over here for the hospital, there's about 400 trees here. So to keep them trimmed and healthy, this is a very good project.
A project worth growing.
Veterans deserve to have this place looking immaculate.
In Helena, Andy Curtis, MTN News.
Thanks, Andy. Now there's more news from across our state on tonight's MTN 9 o'clock news. Hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. That's exactly what airport crews were doing in Great Falls today. We'll take you there. But first, on tonight's 5:30 news, we'll showcase the bright lights and bright minds out in western Montana. Check out what's happening in classrooms and beyond. And in sports, Scott shows us why Down syndrome is not keeping this Manhattan cross-country runner from pushing the competition.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green. This is the 5:30 news on Q2, Montana's news leader.